The air inside is colder. The machines breathe like winter. Isaiah stands just inside the door with his hands tucked into his sleeves, eyes on the girl. The curve of Amara's cheek. The tape on her wrist. A braided friendship bracelet looped around in four-pole like a promise. Elijah's voice is careful. She doesn't respond to stimuli. We've tried. The finest specialists. Isaiah nods, as if the word finest belongs to a different language than the one inside this room. He steps closer, stopping where the blue line on the floor asks him to stop. He closes his eyes and listens the way you listen for a train before you can see it. A small breath, a correction, another breath. Elijah watches the boy's face change. Some inner window opening to a wind Elijah cannot feel. Isaiah reaches a hand toward the air above Amara's hair, palm open, never touching. He inhales. When he exhales, he is steady. What do you think you can do? Elijah asks, and the challenge in it is armor. The plea is underneath. Isaiah's gaze lifts. Sometimes when the world gets loud, people forget the sound that tells them where home is. He swallows. I can show her the way. Elijah's chest tightens. A distant memory prickles at his edges. A woman humming over bathwater, a melody built out of warmth and wool blankets. A song he hasn't let himself remember since the funeral when he became orphan and heir in the same hour. You can show her? Elijah repeats, but softer now. Isaiah nods. If you'll let me. It is not a decision Elijah would ever make in a boardroom. It is not a decision he could defend in an email. It is not a decision that makes sense to any discipline he has mastered. And yet the moment is a threshold, and there are doors reason cannot open. Sing, he says. Isaiah pulls the chair close but does not sit. He stands as you might stand at the edge of a chapel. He rests his backpack on the floor as if setting down the weight of a story he rarely tells. Then he breathes, and out of the thin air he weaves a thread. The lullaby is simple the way first prayers are simple. A melody so old it feels like a path in a forest, walked by the feet of generations until even the stones know the way. Isaiah's voice is soft at first, barely more than a hum, then clearer, warm and human in a room of machines. Sleep now, little light. The night is only keeping time. Close your eyes and find the shore where morning learns to climb. If you're lost between the stars, listen for the river's rhyme. I'm right here. I'm right here. Come home to mine. Elijah's breath catches on the second line. He doesn't know this song, and yet he does. It's as if some thread from a cradle has been tugged softly through the years and has just now reached his hand. The heart monitor glows. The ventilator hushes in its steady hush. Isaiah sings the second verse, and the consonants seem to warm the air, and the vowels are small lanterns, and Elijah realizes he is crying without shame or apology for the first time since the accident. A nurse appears in the doorway, ready to object, and then doesn't. She leans her shoulder to the frame, hand to mouth, transfixed. The night shift respiratory therapist slows in the hall, listening. Across the glass, two interns pause their charting, like deer in a snowy wood when a bell rings somewhere you cannot see. The song is a bridge no architect could draw. It runs from the boy's chest to the girl's breathing and out beyond the window where the cranes keep vigil, and the first suggestion of dawn is nothing more than the idea of a lighter black. When the last note rests, Elijah realizes he has been holding his breath. He expects nothing. He expects everything. He dares not hope and cannot help it. The monitor issues its calm, metronomic reply. The ventilator breathes. The night holds still and listens for its own heartbeat. Isaiah does not ask if anything changed. He only places his hand against his own ribs as if checking that he is still here. I'll come back, he whispers. Before light. Elijah finds his voice. Why? Because sometimes it takes two tides to turn ashore, Isaiah says, and the image is so exact Elijah almost nods like a student. The boy slips back toward the door. Wait, Elijah says, comes out more desperate than he meant. Isaiah looks up. What do you need? Elijah asks. Food? Shoes. The old reflex solve supply secure offers its toolkit. Isaiah's mouth twitches sideways in a smile that is gratitude and boundary at once. I need you to remember something for her. His eyes flick to the ventilator, back to Elijah. Remember what she looked like the last time she made you laugh. The world tilts. Elijah's hand goes to the glass. He nods, and he is nodding to a command he gave up on issuing to himself long ago. Feel this. Don't run. Isaiah slips into the corridor like a shadow that leaves warmth behind. At the window, Elijah closes his eyes and holds the picture the boy asked for. The afternoon Amara built a living room fort out of cashmere throws and convinced him to crawl inside as if they were travelers in a tent on a mountain, and she made him tea from an empty teapot and announced solemnly, "When I am a scientist, I will cure everything that makes you sad." And he'd laughed so helplessly he knocked over the fake teacup, and she declared, "Then I'm a scientist already." And the sound of it, her triumph, was a bell you could hear from space. He presses his palm to the glass. "Hear me, kiddo," he whispers. "I'm right here." In the days that follow, the hospital becomes a narrow world braided out of routines. Morning rounds, tests, a neurologist with careful eyes. Elijah's assistant leaves messages he doesn't answer. A publicist drafts statements he doesn't read. Money moves without him, emails pile like drifts. He drinks bad coffee and watches the second hand of a clock make courage out of minutes. And Isaiah returns. Sometimes just before dawn, sometimes after school hours that aren't his, because school is a place he visits when he can. A shelter asks no questions he can afford to answer. A security guard learns his name. A nurse stashes granola bars in a drawer. The charge nurse with the tattoo of a sparrow on her wrist says, 5 minutes, the first night and 10 the next, and then one evening she puts her palm flat against the glass beside Elijah's and says, "Let him have the hour." Isaiah always washes his hands like a ritual, keeps his voice low, never touches anything but the air. He talks between verses, small, ordinary stories. A dog with one blue eye and one brown who follows him sometimes. A woman at the mission who swears the recipe for kindness is broth and thyme. How the downtown library smells like pencil shavings and paper angels. Elijah listens, and something in him unclenches that had become part of his posture. He tells Isaiah things he doesn't tell interviewers with microphones worth small cars. Amara's frog phase, when she rescued every amphibian she could find after a rainstorm. The time she painted a perfect, terrible portrait of him that she insisted be hung in the foyer with a spotlight. The way she argued with her teacher about whether the color gold should count as a color or a promise. They become a kind of family without a vocabulary for what to call themselves. At night, Isaiah sings, and Elijah watches his daughter's face for tremors the doctors tell him not to look for. In the morning, Elijah walks Isaiah to the elevator bank and pretends he doesn't want to follow him out into a city that would require a different kind of courage. Once, on a rain-polished afternoon, Elijah offers Isaiah a ride and the boy refuses with a shake of his head so dignified Elijah feels reprimanded and educated at once. "Some doors you don't drive through," Isaiah says, and Elijah hears it as an ethic. "You walk, otherwise you don't learn how." Sometimes Isaiah hums when he is not singing words, and the hum finds corners in the room where dust motes turn like galaxies and the light seems to listen. Once, a paper crane flutters on a current no one feels and tilts its beak toward the bed like a gesture in a language only children and wind understand. Elijah stops pretending he isn't seeing the world tilt toward the inexplicable. Nights divide themselves into before song and after song. Before song is the ache opening like weather. After song is a quiet you might call peace if you believed in naming things you don't understand. Elijah begins to sleep in a recliner by the window. When he wakes at 3:11, a hush in the hall tells him the lullaby is still looping somewhere in memory, like a river under ice. One evening, Isaiah arrives with a new thing. A melody that is the lullaby's twin but not the same. A fragment, he says, came to him at the shelter when a woman in a red scarf laughed through her tears after a call from a kid who finally answered. "It belongs to her," he says, nodding toward the bed. It sounds like the way she looked when she said, "Scientist already." He sings it. It is small and bright and mischievous, with a kindness in its bones. Elijah laughs out loud, a sound that startles the night nurse and makes Isaiah grin because he was right. The tune is the shade of Amara's joy. On the 17th night, the respiratory therapist leans into Elijah's field of vision and whispers, "Don't freak out. but her saturation just nudged up. The words are a paper boat launched onto a river, and Elijah knows enough science to know paper boats are not the river. And still, he watches that number as if it were sunrise. After the song, Isaiah steps back and rubs his arms against the cold. He looks pale. "You okay?" Elijah asks, and hears how Father comes easily to his own voice when directed outwards. "Yeah." Isaiah tries to make it casual and fails. "Just no dinner yet." He shrugs, the small soldier who doesn't want medals. Elijah's chest hurts in a new place. "Stay," he says, already halfway to the staff lounge. He returns with soups and a grilled cheese and one of those hospital chocolate puddings that tastes like nostalgia. Isaiah eats slowly, trying not to act like the first spoonful is a kind of miracle. Elijah sits beside him. "Where's your family?" he asks, then realizes he has breached a border. Isaiah keeps chewing for a long time. When he swallows, his eyes are on the girl beyond the glass. "Around," he says, then, quieter. "Somewhere. Maybe behind the next turn." He taps the plastic spoon against the cup. "Sometimes the song is the only thing I've got that knows my name." Elijah doesn't speak. He has paid for symphonies and orchestras and patent portfolios. He knows the price of everything and the value of almost nothing. He looks at the boy, and the word son crosses his mind like a comet. Beautiful, dangerous, not meant to be owned. "Then I will learn it," Elijah says, surprising them both. "So it doesn't have to do that work alone." Isaiah's mouth opens like a bird catching snow. He nods. He teaches Elijah one verse, softly, awkwardly, and Elijah's baritone is rusted and breaks on the edges, but the tone under the breaking is true, and when he reaches the last line, "I'm right here," the room feels briefly warmer. That night, Elijah dreams of a shoreline he doesn't recognize and wakes with the taste of salt and the certainty that somewhere, something is turning toward them. The 23rd night is wind-heavy. Palms chitter against the glass like gossip. Down on the street, a streetlight flickers in a rhythm that answers the ventilator's hush, as if the city and the machine have agreed to a duet. Isaiah is late. Elijah tells himself not to watch the elevator clock, and watches anyway. When the doors finally slide open, the boy is damp from mist and grinning with a private victory. He has acquired a thrift store hoodie the color of dawn and a paperback missing its cover, because someone at the shelter said, "Take it, kid, the book found you." He ducks into the room and shrugs off his backpack. His hair is wet. He wipes the water from his eyebrows with the heel of his hand and then, without a word, he sings. It is the lullaby again, but something in it has turned. It is the difference between a map and a memory. It is the moment when you return to a road you took as a child and discover that every tree has a name you didn't know you knew. The vowels have river in them. The consonants have the dry comfort of wool. Isaiah's voice is stronger, not louder. More sure that the path is there even when your eyes are closed. Halfway through the second verse, the room changes. It is small at first, an almost imperceptible relaxation at the corner of Amara's mouth. The slightest sigh that is not mechanical. Elijah's body leans forward of its own accord, nostrils flaring, as if scent could catch miracle. The nurse's clipboard stops scratching. The heart monitor holds steady and then, by a breath, eases into a rhythm the respiratory therapist will later call closer to her. Isaiah keeps singing, and Elijah sees it. The barest flutter beneath Amara's left eyelid, like a fish turning underwater. It happens and is gone. A tremor, a rumor under the skin. Elijah's hand slams flat to the glass. "Again," he whispers to Isaiah, and the boy does not need telling. He's already there, looping the phrase that holds the road open, opening the gate again and again with patient repetition. Come home to mine." The eyelid flutters once more. The nurse breathes, "Lord," before remembering where she is. On the sill, a paper crane shifts a quarter inch and decides to live there, facing the bed. A breeze. Elijah would swear it. A thread of warmer air winding through the room like the ghost of a summer afternoon when the AC went out and Amara begged to camp on the rooftop under nothing but sky. Isaiah slows the song as if laying a child into sleep. On the last line, He lowers his voice to a hum so intimate Elijah feels he should look away. The hum fades to silence. The room listens to itself. The monitor agrees to keep history with the heart it watches. The ventilator lets its ocean move in and out. Elijah realizes his legs are shaking. He sits hard in the chair he never notices and stares at his hands. The universe is as it was 6 minutes ago, and it is not. Like a word you have said so many times it becomes noise, and then, once, suddenly means itself again with terrifying clarity. Isaiah presses his palm to the plastic of the chair back as if steadying both of them. His voice is raw when he whispers, "She heard something." Elijah doesn't trust his mouth with speech. He nods. He nods like prayer. He nods like a man who has been living on one lung. He looks at the girl and thinks, if all the world is physics, then let this be a physics of love I don't yet know the math for. The night nurse wipes her eyes. "I'm charting that," she says to the air, and then laughs softly because what would she chart? Patient remembered the sound of home. Elijah stands, and he does something he has not done since boarding school. He kisses his fingertips and presses them to his daughter's name on the chart. He looks at Isaiah. "Sing again tomorrow," he says. It has the tone of executive instruction and the tremor of a plea. Isaiah nods. "I will." He slings the backpack with the paperback onto one shoulder. "You remember, too," he adds, pointing at Elijah's chest. "The part where she said she could cure everything that makes you sad. She can hear you when you remember that." Elijah closes his eyes. "I remember," he says, and the words feel like stepping onto a boat that is finally untied from its mooring. Morning breaks storm bright and brittle. Elijah goes home for a shower, the first in days that feels like more than a duty, and returns to an elevator jammed with visitors bearing balloons and doubt. He steps out with 2 coffees and a question in his mouth. He doesn't have time to ask it. The alarm shrieks from down the hall before he reaches the door. Nurses move fast. A resident murmurs orders with the unsteady calm of someone borrowing authority from a training manual. The ventilator's hush is chopped by a different rhythm. Urgent, metallic, insistent. "Desaturation," someone says. "Her oxygen." Elijah drops the coffees. They explode across the floor in brown galaxies he will step through and not see. He hits the glass with his palm and remembers it is locked. The nurse he trusts finds him, eyes kind and sharp at once. "Step back, Mr. Cole. Give us space." It is a script he has heard and hates. He obeys. He does not breathe. The room becomes choreography. A nurse at the head, one at the feet, a doctor moving like a conductor who cannot slow the score. Numbers fall on the monitor like stones. Time measureless, then suddenly measured to the cruelty of a second hand. "Isaiah," Elijah says to no one. It is a prayer or a command or the first word of a confession. He fumbles his phone, calls the number the shelter wrote on a napkin, gets a recorded voice telling him office hours are mercy with locks. He calls again and again as if the repetition might move a mountain. He curses at an elevator like a man who has forgotten his own location in space. The lullaby is nowhere. The room is fluorescent. The crane on the windowsill faces the bed like a boy holding his breath in church. "Bag her," the resident says. Come on. Elijah's hands are on his knees. His forehead touches the glass. He bargains with a God he has not spoken to since he was 14, and the first perfection he loved broke under a truck's indifferent wheel. He promises and bargains and threatens, and then, finally, he says the only honest sentence he has left, "Please." The number droops again, then holds, then shudders up one notch like a hill you push a stalled car over while strangers appear from doorways to add their hands to the back bumper. The nurse's shoulder sags. The doctor lets a breath out that he will not call relief in front of the chart. A long minute, then another. The numbers return to their stubborn, precarious baseline. The room reassembles itself into furniture and machines instead of fire and sirens. The resident rubs his eyes. The nurse is already documenting because the world is made of paperwork as much as it is made of breath. Elijah's cheek is wet against the glass, and the wet is not from outside. He backs up one step, too. He is shaking. He looks at his daughter and recognizes that he cannot do another hour like the last one. He grabs his coat and runs. The rain is animal, immediate. He forgets an umbrella and does not go back. The city treats him like any man running in a suit. Indifferent, mildly baffled. A river he must cross alone. He does not stop until he reaches the downtown mission like a man who has followed a single thread out of a labyrinth and discovered it led to a door he must knock on with his whole self. Inside, fluorescent kindness. A woman at a desk with a name tag that says Lucia looks up. Her face changes when she sees his. She told us about you, she says. It is not a sentence that belongs to logic. He nods anyway because he has no logic left that is useful. I need Isaiah, Elijah says, like someone asking for water. Lucia tilts her head toward the back. Downstairs. Music room. She smiles, tired, genuine. That what we call the basement with the leaky pipes. Elijah takes the stairs 2 at a time. He finds a door propped open with a milk crate of sheet music that doesn't match any piano. Inside, a dozen folding chairs, a cluster of children, a guitar with 3 strings. Isaiah stands at the front teaching a little girl how to breathe so her shoulders don't do all the work. He looks up as if he knew Elijah was coming. Elijah cannot speak at first. His chest is a closed fist. When he does, it is one word. Please. Isaiah's eyes move in a quick scan. Elijah's soaked hair, the tremor in his hands, the coat he isn't wearing. He nods to Lucia in the door, who nods back because she reads languages not taught in school. He tells the children he'll be quick. He steps into the hall. What happened? He asks. Elijah cannot finish the sentence because the end of it is a cliff. He swallows. They grabbed the bag. I don't know how many minutes more like this I can. He stops again because the rest of that confession is cry. He squeezes his eyes shut. I need you. There are sentences that build houses and there are sentences that take roofs off. Isaiah lets this one rain on him. He nods once and reaches for his backpack. Let's go, he says. They run into a city that seems to move aside half a step, making a space the size of a boy and a man running toward the same promise. The elevator ride is a century. Elijah watches the numbers light up like a child counting lightning before thunder. Isaiah stands next to him breathing through his nose like he is listening to a metronome in the wall. The doors open. The hall is dimmer, the way halls are dimmer in the hour right before the first light thinks about happening. The nurse with the sparrow tattoo looks up and relief crosses her face like shade. She's holding, she says before either of them ask. It was rough, but she's holding. They wash hands in silence. Elijah wants to run but moves like a man in a church, aware of sanctuaries he cannot name. Inside the room, Isaiah closes his eyes. Elijah hears a sound come out of the boy's chest that is not voice yet. More like the engine turning over before the car catches. That moment of choice of whether the journey will happen. He begins to sing. The lullaby is the same. The lullaby is not the same. He sings as if what he is singing to is not a girl in a bed but a shore half seen through fog. He sings like a rope being thrown. He sings like a hand on a back saying yes, that way, yes, you can. The words are ordinary. The effect is not. Sleep now, little light. On the third line, Elijah joins him. His voice breaks and then doesn't. He sings like someone who has been afraid of music, who is singing anyway because a child asked him to remember and a boy taught him how. Listen for the river's rhyme. The room changes. The word mystery is an overused word. The word miracle is a word Elijah has avoided because it is expensive in a currency he never learned to trade. But what happens next insists on being called by one of those names. A breeze again. Not the vent, not the AC. The nurses know the difference, though they will not log it. A tremble at Amara's throat. The mildest shift of her lips, as if a dream has just gotten its timing right. Isaiah keeps singing and tears slip down his face now like rain that belongs to a different weather system. The nurse pinches the bridge of her nose and pretends it is hay fever. Elijah leans close enough that his breath fogs the edge of tape. Kiddo, he says, and this time the word is a key in a lock. I'm here. The monitor lifts. A small lift. Then another. Come on. Isaiah whispers, not to Elijah, not to anyone you can see. Elijah feels his own knees threaten to go. The boy's hand is at the rail as if he would hold the bed and the world in place with one palm if asked. Please, Elijah says again to the room, to the girl, to whatever has been listening all these weeks. Amara's eyelids move. Not the tiny flutter that could be explained away in debrief as artifact or wish. A slow lift, like someone opening the heavy door of a church that has been shut for winter. A sliver of iris gleams. The music stops because Elijah has stopped remembering how to make sounds that aren't this kind of astonishment. Hi, Isaiah says to her, as if this is a friend arriving late to the playground. We're here. The eyelids close again, then open a second time, wider. A wetness in the eye that is not from air. A blink and a new orbit. The mouth moves around something, not the tube. Elijah's name arrives in the space between the beeps without fully becoming a sound. Dad. Elijah's hands slam to the rail and then to his own face because if he touches her now, he might unmake the universe by loving it too much. Yeah, he hears himself say, and the word cracks in the middle and keeps going. Yeah, sweetheart, I'm right here. The nurse's voice is calm when she says, let's call the team. But her hands are trembling as she presses the button. The resident arrives and swallows a textbook, forgets to swallow his tears with it. The respiratory therapist is already moving to change settings, to let a body try for itself what a machine has been doing on its behalf. Isaiah steps back. He wipes his cheeks on his sleeve and looks smaller now, like a boy who has used a great part of his small body to build a bridge for someone and is now content to be small again for a while. Elijah turns and takes him in his arms the way a father takes a son who has just returned from a swim past the breakers. Thank you, Elijah says into the boy's wet hair, and the words are not large enough and never will be and are all he has. Isaiah makes a sound that might be a laugh, might be a sob. Sing with her, he says thickly. She's going to need your voice now. Days become an orchestra tuning to a new key. Tubes lessen. Machines that were sentences turn into punctuation marks. Amara's breaths discover their own rhythm the way a child finds balance and then can't remember being without it. The first time she holds Elijah's finger with full intention. The nurse pretends to check a monitor so she will not intrude on a sacrament. Isaiah keeps coming. He brings a plastic recorder someone left behind and shows Amara the absurdity of trying to make twinkle, twinkle on an instrument designed to test the patience of saints. She rolls her eyes at him and the eye roll is so exactly her that Elijah has to sit down. He laughs until the tears turn again into laughter. The hospital chaplain, who has learned not to talk too much in rooms where the unsayable does its work, stops in the doorway sometimes to say nothing at all and to nod at the crane on the sill like an old rival who lost a bet gladly. The day the doctors clear Amara to sit up without a nest of pillows. A small crowd of nurses stand in the hall pretending to check the staffing board so they can see without being seen. Elijah helps, hands unsteady with reverence. He is a clumsy priest in a rite he would die to get right. Amara's voice is a ghost of a bell when she says, "You look older," and the room composes itself around the sound of her teasing. He laughs. "I have been negotiating with the night," he says, and realizes he is not speaking in metaphors. He is delivering minutes to a child. That evening, after a nap that feels earned rather than imposed, Amara looks at Isaiah and says, "You sing like the elevator that goes to the garden on the roof." It is the kind of compliment children give when they are telling the truth with their whole bodies and have not learned to pad it in packaging. Isaiah grins. "That's the best thing anyone's ever said to me." "Good," she says with 12-year-old authority. "Because it's true. There are formalities to attend to, discharge processes, outpatient schedules, the slow ballet of rehab. There are also the informalities without which the formalities would be only signatures. Pizza on paper plates spread across Elijah's office couch. A blanket brought from home that smells like last summer's sun. A paper crown Isaiah fashions out of a napkin that Amara insists Elijah wear for exactly 13 seconds. The press will make of it what the press makes of things. A fairy tale, a headline about a street kid and a billionaire family. Elijah's people try to keep the cameras away from the boy and succeed more often than not. The hospital staff protects as if protection were a job description and also a love language. One afternoon, a lawyer with a tie as careful as a surgeon's knots meets Elijah in a conference room and clears his throat. "Regarding the boy," he says, as if presenting a new product line. Elijah lifts a hand and the man stops. "We will do what is loving," Elijah says. "And we will do it rightly." The lawyer nods because this is a language he can learn. When Amara is wheeled through the lobby on the day she leaves, the automatic doors hiss open like a sigh of agreement. The sky is an extravagant, foolish blue, the kind you'd accuse a screenwriter of if you didn't live in Los Angeles. Elijah steps into the light with his daughter, and Isaiah stands there with a backpack and a hood pulled up against nothing but brightness. And the three of them are, briefly, a constellation no one has yet named. "Ready?" Elijah asks. Amara looks at the stairs, the car, the day. She looks at Isaiah. "Sing it with me?" she asks, as if requesting a favorite song on a car radio. They do, on the sidewalk, in broad daylight, quietly because the song is not a performance. Nurses pretend to check badges so they can listen. A woman passing with a grocery bag slows and smiles the way people smile at flowers that grew where concrete said they couldn't. Elijah's voice breaks on, "I'm right here." He doesn't mind. Breaking is how light gets edges to hold on to. A breeze, of course there is a breeze, lifts the paper crane in the crook of Amara's lap blanket. It doesn't fly. It doesn't need to. Everyone present knows it could. 6 months later, the penthouse is different. The rooms are the same size, the glass is the same glass, the view is the view of a city in the habit of its own spectacle, but the air has changed density. There are drawings on the refrigerator. There is a plant that is not plastic. There are shoes in the hall that do not belong to Elijah. On a shelf by the window sit 3 paper cranes. One from the hospital sill, one Amara made with her therapist as an exercise in stubborn hope, one Isaiah folded on the kitchen island with a precision that surprised them both. Amara does school on the couch with a tutor who laughs easily and corrects gently, and when she needs rest she rests, which is not a capitulation. It is an art. Sometimes she runs a hand along her left forearm, feeling the ghost of 4 tape like the edge of a map that says, "You are here, and you were there, and look, this is the path you took." Elijah has a desk he actually leaves sometimes. He still runs an empire. He also runs errands for juice boxes and finds the second task terrifying in a way the first never was. He returns to meetings with less to prove and more to do. He spends money in places he can explain to his own conscience without an appendix. Isaiah comes and goes like a tide that chooses its own moon. Some nights he stays because staying makes sense now, because the papers are in motion and the words temporary guardianship are becoming exactly as temporary as they need to be to become something else. Other nights he returns to the shelter to sit with a kid whose hands won't stop shaking or to play scales on a piano with 3 notes dead because some music is not about sound but about insisting that the instrument is still an instrument even when it isn't. At the foundation Elijah launched under a different name. A new wing opens under a new name. Rivers Rhyme. Community music rooms. After school quiet. A closet full of shoes with laces that won't shred in a week. A sign by the door that reads, "Whatever brought you here, welcome. Whatever you carry, some of us can help you hold it for a while." They go to the roof some evenings with blankets and tea. The city throws its necklace of light around their shoulders. Elijah points at constellations and makes up names when he forgets the real ones. Amara calls him on it gleefully. Isaiah sees Orion in a scaffolding and laughs. One night, while traffic stitches a silver seam along the freeway, Elijah says, without preamble, "I want you to know you are not a charity case." He is looking at Isaiah, and his hands are quiet in his lap. Isaiah looks back, not offended because the sentence missed him. "I know," he says. He tips his chin at Amara, who is fussing with a paper crane that refuses symmetry. "I am her friend. And yours, I guess." The "I guess" is armor. Elijah respects armor when it is chosen. "More than that," Elijah says softly. "If you want." Isaiah's body goes very still. Words exist that can only be said when the roof is big enough to hold them. Elijah says them carefully, like a bridge he's building while standing on it. "There is a kind of family that isn't paperwork," he says. "It is what we do with our hands." He gestures at the cranes, the tea, the city. "But there is also paperwork. And I would like to do that part too, together, with what is right for you." Isaiah's mouth opens and then closes. He nods once, twice, a third time, because sometimes yes needs 3 doors to walk through. Okay, he says, voice very small because he is making space for the very big. Amara speaks up without looking. Duh. She flattens the crane's wing and smirks. You sing like the elevator, remember? They laugh, which is maybe the most binding contract. At the music room's inaugural afternoon, a dozen kids hold instruments like passports. Isaiah shows a boy how to make a note without scaring it. Amara invents a system of stars for practice, because gold stickers are a lie and stars should belong to effort, not perfection. Elijah sits in the doorway pretending he is not crying, and a volunteer pretends not to notice. After the kids leave, Amara leans against Elijah's arm. Remember the tent? She asks. He chuckles. The living room one? She nods. We made tea out of nothing. We should do that again. We are, he says, kissing the top of her head. Every day. 1 year later, cherry trees bloom shamelessly in Echo Park, ridiculous with pink like the world forgot its modesty. On a small stage under a winking string of lights, 3 people stand before a crowd of neighbors, donors, nurses who called in favors to get the evening off, kids from the music room, a woman in a red scarf who laughs through tears. Elijah speaks briefly, the way you do when speeches are less important than the thing you are opening. We all know the story, he says, and some of them do and some of them don't, and that is fine. Here is what I learned. Technology can build bridges, but love decides where to put them. We are here because love made a map we didn't have. He steps back. Amara steps up, as if stepping to a microphone were like stepping to a friend. Thank you for the songs you sang when I forgot the words, she says. Her voice wobbles and then steadies. I will pay you back with 1,000 lullabies you don't even know you need yet. She grins and steps aside. Isaiah takes the center anyway and does not look like a boy rescued. He looks like a boy with a job. He lifts his chin, and without guitar or stage light or anything but the air, he sings. The lullaby is the same. The lullaby is not the same. It is bigger now because it belongs to more people. Some in the crowd do not know why their throats hurt. Others know exactly. Nurses mouth the words. A security guard swallows and pretends it's spring allergies. A little boy on his father's shoulders sleeps with his eyes open, the way kids do when they are listening at the edge of waking. When the song ends, there is applause the way rain is applause when it finally finds a roof to love. People are crying the way people cry when they thought they had used up that part of themselves and are delighted to be wrong. Under the stage, a plaque reads, Voices at Dawn Community Room, for the songs that bring us home. The 3 of them step down and into the moving river of the crowd. Paper cranes hang from the trees like frost that learned how to glow. Someone lights sparklers because someone always does when nights decide to remember joy. The narrator's voice arrives like a hand on the shoulder, warm and steady. There are miracles that look like thunderclaps. There are miracles that look like a boy with bare feet and a song. A father who remembers he is not a machine. A child who opens her eyes because love called her by her true name. There are rooms where machines breathe for us, and rooms where someone chooses to stand beside the machine and sing. We are wrong when we think these are 2 different rooms. We tell stories to remember where home is. We sing to lay a path. We love to turn the night in the direction of dawn. Elijah looks at the 2 children who are not both his by law yet and both his by law written in a book no courthouse keeps. He puts a hand on each head and closes his eyes as if receiving a blessing that is also a task. The breeze moves among the cranes. Somewhere in the city, a siren wails and a dog answers, and a nurse on break hums a tune that she did not know she knew, and a child at a window listens and finds the road in the dark. The greatest miracle is not that the body remembers how to breathe. The greatest miracle is that we remember how to belong to one another, and in that belonging, even the impossible learns the steps. The lights flicker a little as if agreeing. The crowd begins to sing the chorus together without being told, the way people do at the end of weddings and lightning storms and long wars. I'm right here. I'm right here. Come home to mine. And Los Angeles, restless, neon, tender, absurd, sings back.